Hello, today I'm going to talk about understanding students with ADHD. Hopefully I have better luck recording this time than last time because I was not able to get this to cooperate. So, there are a lot of things that you need to know when learning about students or children in general that have ADHD. It can be misunderstood, it can be misdiagnosed, and so there's a lot of factors that go into diagnosis and treatment and education when it comes to students with ADHD. So, according to the CDC, 11% of all children, ranging in ages from 4 to 17, have had, at some point in their lives, a diagnosis of ADHD. Whether that means they still actively have that diagnosis or not, at some point in their lives, they have had that diagnosis. These numbers equate to roughly 6.4 million children in the U.S. alone. That's a lot of children. These numbers were from about 2011, 2012, so if you could imagine, those numbers are exponentially higher at this point, being that it's 2017, almost 2018 now. That is a lot of children. That is a lot of children that have, at some point in their lives, had a diagnosis of ADHD. Studies have shown that there has been a huge increase in the diagnosis. It's tremendous in number. The increase just from 2003 until 2011 was over 43%, and more each day they are diagnosing girls with ADHD, and it was always commonly known that boys were ones that had ADHD, and the numbers of girls that are being diagnosed are growing at a more rapid rate than the boys are even. Just the numbers are astonishing. It's not really clear. I looked and didn't see a lot about why exactly the numbers are growing so rapidly. Is it that they're just finding more children that have ADHD, or is it that it's being overdiagnosed? There's not a clear answer, but the fact remains that there are so many children each and every day being diagnosed with ADHD, and the numbers are just growing and growing and growing. There are very distinct characteristics for kids that have ADHD. Pretty clear behaviors, although some can be more mild while others are more severe. The characteristics are inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. These I'm going to discuss over the next few minutes. So for inattention, it can be difficulty concentrating. Students can't focus and concentrate on the teacher when she's giving the lesson. They can't pay attention and keep their attention on a given task and find themselves getting distracted. That goes hand in hand with the next part, which is problems with focus and attention. They miss parts of the lesson, or they don't understand. They get confused because their minds get distracted. They can't stay focused. They see other things that capture their attention. They might appear to not be listening. Doesn't mean they're not, but they might be fidgeting with something in their desk, and the teacher doesn't think they're paying attention. But it could just be that they just can't stare at the teacher for 20, 30 minutes while going through the lesson, and they may need to focus their visual attention elsewhere, but they might be hearing. Other times they're not hearing anything at all, and they are completely losing focus. They have a hard time with planning and organizing and completing their tasks, and especially completing them on time. A lot of times children with ADHD turn in late assignments, incomplete assignments. They may not turn in their homework at all. And there has to be plans set in place to help them with these skills, which we'll talk about later on. They demonstrate poor self-regulation or behavior, so they might lash out at people or get upset or freak out when things change, when a substitute comes in and the schedule or the routine isn't the same, when they have to go from one room to another. They may have a hard time adjusting. Just things that we would think are, not a big deal, but are very, very detrimental to them and cause chaos in their routine. For hyperactivity portion of the behaviors or the characteristics, they have a lot of excessive movement. They have a hard time sitting still. You might see a student with ADHD wiggling in their chair, tapping on their desk, fidgeting with their fingers. They might be chewing on things or playing with stuff. Just there's so many different ways that this can exhibit itself. Wandering around the room, having an uncontrollable impulse to get up and just go across the room and touch something just because they just have to. They can't sit still. Once their mind focuses on something, they can't let it go until they follow through. They might jump around from one thing to another. They might be at one station doing a puzzle, and they'll put a few pieces together, and then all of a sudden they're in the art center, and then they have to go to the bathroom. But then they come back from the bathroom, and they go to wash their hands, but then they get distracted, and they want to go over and see what their friend is doing. So they're just jumping from one thing to another, and often trying to do all three of those things at once, but never completing any of those tasks because they can't slow their brain down to complete one task at a time before moving on. For the impulsivity, they have a hard time with impulse control. All too frequently you see students that they get upset by something or they get frustrated or confused and they'll lash out at another student or they'll lash out at a staff member because they're frustrated and they don't know how to communicate that. And so that's a typical characteristic of a student with ADHD. And also, they have a hard time with taking turns. They might cut in line because they feel like they should be the head of the line every time, or they don't want to wait for the whole class to go in. They don't do well with partner games or group games because they don't want to have to wait their turn. I play a game with some of my students where we play a memory game or we'll play bingo, and it might just be 3 or 4 of us, but they really don't like having to wait their turn because if somebody else wins, then that's frustrating for them because they want it to be their turn. They want to win. They want to get the matches. They want to get the bingos. And they can't control the way that it makes them feel. They don't understand waiting their turn is important. So when it comes to understanding children with ADHD, what's important to know is that not all children exhibit the same characteristics or even at the same level. You might have one student that has a problem with, sitting still, but they might just wiggle, just do this in their chair, while another student just flat out cannot sit down. You might have one that has a hard time with organization and just needs some assistance with keeping them organized and they can follow through with their activities, but then you have the next student who it doesn't matter what you do to try to keep them organized. They are always, their organization level is just non-existent and it's a mess all the time and they can't find anything ever. So some children can be easily redirected to correct these behaviors, the outbursts or the impulse issues, and other ones just have a really hard time with it. And every child with ADHD is completely different from the next one. Although they have the same behaviors, they have the same characteristics. Some may exhibit some characteristics while others don't, and vice versa. There's no textbook you have to meet all 10 of the 10 criteria or whatever. You might exhibit 7 of the 10 and 3 are mild while the other 4 are severe. So, each child is different, just like they're different in every single other way. Their diagnosis is different, and it's for different reasons, and they're all on different levels. And according to the IDEA, children that have a diagnosis with ADHD would be categorized under other health impairments. When you see an IEP, it talks about delays or disabilities, and you have different codes. You'll have autism, or you'll have a cognitive delay, or a developmental delay. OHI stands for other health impairments, and that is the category that ADHD falls under. And I actually didn't know this when I've seen some IEPs of my students. I didn't realize what other health impairment included. I just figured it wasn't one of the more general, frequently used behaviors, or not behaviors, I'm sorry, disorders that were more clearly identified on the IEPs. So that was very interesting to learn about. Children that have ADHD are more likely to succeed when, not just in the classroom, but in the building, at home, when interventions are put in place. And these can be modified directions. So breaking down the instructions one step at a time, deconstructing their task. Take the activity and break it down into smaller parts. If it's a packet of worksheets that needs to be completed, give them one worksheet at a time. Giving them a whole packet might be overwhelming. Allow other ways for them to complete these tasks. Some may, if you give them a written assignment, they may have a hard time writing, so allow them to type it. Find a speech-to-text program that will allow them to speak into a computer and have the computer type it for them. Set up a way to help them keep them organized. Provide planners that you may have an adult or the student that sometimes can do it themselves, or a peer could even write in their planner what their homework is, what work was done for the day, what supplies they may need. Color code their classes so they know the blue folder is for math and the red is English, and the left side is work that's complete they're working on, the right side needs to be churned in. Just setting up these different organizational techniques will help them tremendously, because sometimes that is where they struggle the most. Set up times where you can assist in helping them cleaning their desk, or their cubby, or their backpack, or their locker, just to help keep them organized so they don't get overwhelmed. Provide peer tutors. Sometimes getting one-on-one from another student helps tremendously, because they understand it a little differently coming from someone who speaks their language at their age. Some other important things are frequent redirection. You give the instruction, and if they lose it or they don't seem to be following it, you give the instruction again, and then you give the instruction again. And, they just might need redirection because they've lost the focus. Give nonverbal supports, visuals, hand gestures, make eye contact with them so they know that they need to redirect themselves. Set clear expectations. Cooperative learning is great with this. You give them a role and you tell them what is expected of them, and then they know their part. Keep them, when you seat them somewhere, keep their seat somewhere where they're not going to be distracted. Speak with parents so that there's consistency, that you're doing the same thing at school that's being done at home, so that the child knows their expectations. It's clear, there's no confusion. Offer breaks or prizes, reward choice time in between activities, and praise the positive behaviors immediately. Even if it's something small, like, thank you for sitting down in your chair. Thank you for not throwing your crayon. Those are just small, they seem like small things and they seem tedious, but they make a huge difference. Thank you.